Okay, we're back from the second break, I guess. So we're starting the last half of our show, and one of the things that that I was reading about, we're talking about that I don't know if I've really ever talked about it on the show, but would be common thyroid disorders, and one of the things that seems to be really important is just every year you go to get your thyroid checked and the doctor will, or if you're on thyroid medication, basically what do we do about that? How often do we check that? So before I talk about that, we have Ray to call back. Ray.
Hey Doc, Ray the Flagman again.
Yep.
I pulled a muscle in my calf the other day, and it started getting better, and then, crazy me, I walk for an hour, and all of a sudden it comes back. Somebody had said to me today that if I drink quinine water, that it would help out. And I'm also thinking of an ACE bandage, but I don't want to cut off the circulation. Is there any truth to the quinine water taking care of a muscle problem? And will an ACE bandage cut off circulation and hurt me more than help me, or should I just stop walking for a while and let it heal? And I'm going to call back to this next section, your next part, because I want to comment on the growth.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Well, a lot depends on the nature of the injury and how you strained that calf muscle. If it was a really sudden jar from basically, a really sudden traumatic injury, and there was a lot of bruising with it, then you probably tore muscle. And when you tore muscle, that's more of a traumatic injury. And I would think, in that case, you might want to try and control some of the swelling with an ACE rapid. Ice and elevation would probably be your best bet. And certainly, depending on how you're going to wrap the ACE, you can create an edematous problem below the ACE wrap. So unless you were going to start at the toes and wrap all the way up the toes to above the knee, then I probably would resist the ACE wrap unless it was a short-term issue. Quinine water. You used to be able to buy quinine tablets over the counter in 324 milligrams, and they were very, very useful restless leg syndrome, where people would have these cramps in the middle of the night, and they took it off the market. But they never really brought it back, as Chuck might suggest, in the form of a capsule. So I know it's been an old treatment for malaria. It may have some other mild side effects on your red blood cells and some other issues, but for the most part, quinine water, which are tonic waters, is very effective in treating leg cramps at night and may help to treat muscle cramping from that. Now, traumatic versus restless leg, kind of a different story, but I will say that it is very effective for treating muscle cramps at night. So, that's one of those journal of irreproducible results, meaning you're going to try it. If it works, you continue it. If it doesn't, no harm done, no foul. So, hope that answered your question, and if it didn't, well, you'll call back and let me know. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about thyroid. And so when you go to the doctor and they check your thyroid, usually they do what they call a TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. And what that checks is a certain hormone that comes from the base of your brain in the hypothalamus, and it basically stimulates your thyroid gland to produce thyroid hormone. We make what we call T4, which is 4 iodines on a particular benzene ring, and then that goes to cleave to T3. So T3 is the active ingredient that actually works in our thyroid. Now, it's very complex, and sometimes thyroid, there's a lot of different diseases in the thyroid, but as you get older, you tend to make a little less thyroid. So if your TSH is elevated above 4.5, then that very well can be what we call, subclinical hypothyroidism. And what that means is that you look like you're going to be hypothyroid, but you're not. And we really don't worry about that until your TSH gets above 10. And at above 10, we might want to go ahead and start thinking about replacing that thyroid. But if your TSH is minimally elevated, we don't really worry about doing that. So that's usually, the TSH is a very sensitive test. It's a third generation test. It's usually very reliable. Sometimes we reflex that to T4. We like to see how much T4, and I really am interested in the free T4, not so much the total T4, because the free T4 is what's available to do what it needs to do out in your system. And what do I mean by free T4? Well, not only do we make thyroid hormone, but we have a thyroid binding globulin, and that's actually a protein in our bloodstream that actually, when we produce this thyroid hormone, it basically attaches to this protein. Once it's attached to the protein, it's stuck there, so it can't do what it needs to do in your tissues. That's the difference between free and bound. Once it's stuck, it's in jail, incarcerated. When it leaves the protein, it can now circulate through your tissues and do what it needs to do in your thyroid tissues or in your regular tissues. So what I want to know is what your free is, not necessarily what your total T4 is, but what your free T4 is. Then I can make some inferences based on this TSH and what is real and what is not real. If we replace your thyroid and we give you thyroid, it is very important that you stick with the same thyroid medication. Very important to stick with the same thyroid medication. There's different absorption qualities. You should take it almost at the same time. And thyroid should be taken on an empty stomach. It should not be taken in the middle of the day in the morning. It should probably be taken at night. I used to tell people to take it in the morning thinking it would stimulate their system, but no, it should be taken because it needs to be absorbed in your system, and food and other products does interfere with your thyroid. So if nobody's ever told you that, your thyroid needs to be taken and in the evening when you're not going to be taking anything else, and it can be absorbed in your system. No, it's not going to keep you up or anything like that. And then when you adjust your thyroid dose, you should be checking it every 6 to 8 weeks after you started a new dose. It takes that long for the body to get used to it and to see where you're particularly at. I would not check your thyroid after you've been ill with a cold or flu or had a long illness. We make a different product called Reverse T3, which is a very, very specialized thyroid. And I don't want to go into any detail on that. But the big thing is to remember to take your thyroid on an empty stomach and stick with the same thyroid manufacturer, the same thing. If you're taking Synthroid and then you switch to levothyroxine, back and forth, you're going to encounter totally different results, and your labs will not be able to be interpreted from one test to the next. So those are some interesting things about thyroid. Now, goiters are basically an enlargement of the thyroid gland, and as your body starts to want to produce more thyroid, it will basically sends a signal down to the to the thyroid in the form of increasing TSH, and will actually cause the thyroid gland to enlarge. That's usually a symptom of hypothyroidism, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, because you can have a multinodular toxic goiter, which is actually producing thyroid, and then you might develop thyroid toxicosis. Now, that's a strange phenomenon, but by far the larger portion of the population is what we call subclinical hypothyroid. That means subclinical means they don't have any clinical symptoms, and hypothyroid meaning their TSH is elevated between that 5 and 10 range, but they really don't have any symptoms. And you should not replace that thyroid hormone, because too much thyroid has a lot of deleterious effects on your body, such as cardiac issues. So especially if you're elderly, I expect your TSH to be elevated. If you have a heart problem, I don't want to give you thyroid medication I don't want to stimulate your cardiac. I don't want to cause arrhythmias. I don't want to cause any particular problems. So I might resist in giving you thyroid medication when you're in that gray zone, or that subclinical hypothyroidism. We can also do a thyroid ultrasound that can see goiters or cysts. Most of the cysts that are in your thyroid are basically normal thyroid things because of the producing the thyroid in there. But every once in a while you will find what we call a hypoechoic thyroid nodule, and those are basically what means that it looks solid. If you look on an echocardiogram or any type of ultrasound, things that are filled with fluid are really dark because the sound waves go right through them. Things that are hypo, which means low echoic, means it doesn't have a lot of echo in it. That's usually a solid, and those are somewhat concerning because when you get one that's 1 centimeter or greater, then that might be obvious for thyroid cancer. So then we might be doing a thyroid uptake scan, or we might be offering you a biopsy just to be on the safe side to make sure that you don't develop thyroid cancer. However, saying that, there is one thyroid cancer which actually is associated with a long-term survival in life, which means you'll probably die of something else. That's papillomatous thyroid cancer. If you had to get cancer, that would be the one to get, because it basically is very curable, and it is associated with a longer life. So meaning you'll survive that and go on to expire from something else. So we're going to go to break, and we'll look forward to Ray calling after the break, and thank you for tuning in tonight. Appreciate your calls.